Hi love, welcome back. In today's class you're making this beautiful simple vest top. If you're new to the channel, my name is Miss Ai and you're welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you my love for always coming back. Let's get right into class. I'm going to be using a 3.0 mm hook and I'm going to be using milk cotton yarn. So this is how it looks, milk cotton. So I'll be using about 4 balls of yarn, and also your scissors, your stitch marker, your tape measure. To begin with, you're going to make a slip knot, and I'm going to be working for a size small. So my foundation chain, I'm going to be chaining 130. If you're making for a size medium, consider chaining 140, 150, and if you're making for a size large, consider chaining 170. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 130, and I'll meet you when I'm done with my foundation chain of 130. After your 130 chains, you're going to chain 2, and you are going to skip the 2 chains you just made, and inside the 3rd stitch you are going to make a double crochet. You are going to keep making double crochet in each stitch until the end of the row. At the end of the row, you are going to make sure your work is not twisted, because we are going to be joining those 2 together to form a circle. We are going to be working in rounds. So there you go. Make sure your work is not curved or bent or twisted. So yeah. And we are going to make a slip stitch to connect our work. So what I do to the down opening is I'm going to just slip stitch with that tiny yarn that is left, the tail from where we started our foundation chain. So I'm going to pull that with a slip stitch and chain 1 to connect the bottom part as well. There you go. Now we can start working in rounds. So row 2, you are going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and we are going to be working, you are going to chain 3 and you are going to turn. We are going to be working inside, in between double crochets, in between the double crochets we previously made. So we are not working inside the small stitch, but rather we are working in between the double crochets. So go ahead and place double crochets. So 1 double crochet inside the middle or in between each double crochet stitch all around until the end of the row. So this is how we are going to be working. At the end of the row, you are going to make your last double crochet, and we are going to slip stitch on top of the chain 3 space. Now row 3, we are going to chain 3 again, and we are going to make a double crochet, your first double crochet in between that very first double crochet, and you are going to work double crochet in between each stitches until the end of the row. So we are going to be repeating row 2 until we get to row 18. That is if you are making for a size small. If you are making for a size medium, consider working until you get to 20, row 20. And if you are making for a size large, extra large, consider adding 2 more rows, making it 22. So I'll meet you when I have my 18 rows done, but I'll walk you through a few more rows, and yeah, I'll meet you when I have my 18 rows done. I have my 18 rows done, and it measures 7 inches, slightly 6.9, so 7 inches. So if you are making for a size medium, you can consider making 8 inches. If you are making for a size large, you can consider making 8.5 to 9. So now you are going to divide your work into two. So I've placed my stitch marker on both sides of the work, and this is how it is. We are going to start working our decrease row. So if you are not sure and you cannot eyeball, make sure you count your stitches. So now your decrease row 1, you are going to chain 2, and you are going to skip the very first in between, and we go to the next and make incomplete double crochet. Go inside the next and make a double crochet and complete it. Now we are going to work 1 double crochet inside each stitch in between until we get to the other side of the stitch marker. So work your double crochets until you are 3 stitches left to get to the other side. So I'm 3 stitches left, and we are going to be decreasing again. So this is the second. So we are going to be making 3 incomplete double crochet, and we pull through all 3 to make it our decrease. So this is your decrease row 1. Decrease row 2, you are going to chain 3 and turn your work. So place your stitch marker if you will not be able to eyeball the beginning of the stitch, but if you would be able, that is super cool. So you are going to turn your work, and again we are going to be decreasing. So we are going to skip our very first stitch and inside the next stitch. So that's our very first stitch where the stitch marker is. So inside the next, we are going to work an incomplete double crochet, and we are going to work an incomplete double crochet and pull through all. So this row I made a little mistake. So you can see I'm not working in between stitches, but I'm working on top of the stitches. You have to avoid this. Just work in between stitches, because I'm going to later unravel and I'll work in between stitches. So when you are left with 3 stitches to the end of the row, again you are going to decrease. So this is decrease row 2. Now you are going to chain 3 again, turn your work. You are going to skip your first stitch, and you are going to start making your 3 incomplete double crochets. So the beginning where you skipped, you always have to make 2 incomplete double crochets, and towards the end of the work you make 3 incomplete double crochets. I hope that's clear. So you are going to repeat row 3 of the decrease until you have 7 rows of decrease, and I'll meet you when I have my 7 rows done. So when you are left with 3 stitches to the end, you are going to make 3 incomplete double crochet, and you are going to pull through all, and you are going to chain 3, continue from row 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'll meet you when you are done with row 7. If you are making for a size medium, consider making 8 rows, and if you are making for a size large or extra large, consider adding a row each. I'm done with my decrease rows, and this is what the work looks like now we are going to be making normal double crochets without decreasing. So after the decrease, I have 8 inches, sorry. So this is what I have. So if you don't know how many rows to do, just make sure you work until you have 8 inches of the decrease. And when you get 8 inches for the decrease, now you are going to start making normal double crochets, no decrease. And the normal double crochets, you're going to start from the very first stitch and you end it in that very last stitch. So this is row 1 of our normal double crochets. So with the normal double crochets, again we are going to make 7 rows of our normal double crochets. So this is 1 and 2, and we are going to work 7 rows, and this is our 7 rows. Now we are going to be working the arms, and we are going to chain 3. This time we are just going to work in only 8 stitches. So you start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now depending on how thick you want your strand, you would pause here, and now we decrease inside the following 2 stitches, making it 9. But if you want your strand to be a bit thicker, you can make 10, and then your last 2 stitches you decrease. You are going to chain 3, and we are going to skip the very first stitch, and we are going to work. We are going to skip that very first stitch. So skipping the very first stitch means a decrease, and we are going to keep working double crochets in each stitch until the end of the row. So this is row 2 of the arm. We are going to chain 3 again, turn your work, and we are going to be working double crochets until we have 2 stitches remaining, and we shall decrease. So we decrease, and this is row 3. Now you are going to chain 3 again, turn your work. You are going to skip the very first stitch and the second, and you start working double crochet in each stitch until the end of the row. So that is 4. Depending on how you want your armhole to be, you can work either 4 stitch. So with the size small, I'm working only 4 stitches, 4 rows for the arm, sorry. But if you want your arm to be a bit loose, the armhole to be a bit loose, consider working 5 or 6. But with all, you have to measure. So with this measurement, from the decrease row to my armhole, I have 7 inches, which is perfectly fine for me. But if you want it more loose, then consider adding rows to the arm to get your desired fit for the armhole. So at the end of the row, you are going to chain 1. You are going to leave a pretty long strand and pull through, because we are going to be sewing in. You are going to connect your yarn to the other side, and just as we worked for 4 rows for the other side, you are going to repeat the same exact thing. Connect your yarn, chain 3. Inside the same stitch, you are going to place your double crochets, and that is, you are going to add 7 more double crochets, making it 8. And in your last 2 stitches, you are going to place your decrease. You are going to make sure both sides is equal. So if you made 10 10 stitches for the other side, consider making the same exact numbers. If you made 8 and your last stitch was a decrease, then you do that. So I'm counting to make sure everything is perfect, and now I place my decrease. That's row 1. You're going to chain 2 or 3 and turn your work. We are going to skip that very first stitch and the next stitch, and we are going to be placing double crochet in each stitch until the end of the row. So keep repeating this until you have row 4, and I'll meet you when I'm done with my row 4. At the end of the row, you are going to chain. So I'm going to place my last decrease, and you are going to chain 1 or 2, and you are going to so this is my row 3. So I'm going to work my last row. After your last row, you are going to chain 1 or 2, cut and fasten your yarn, but make sure you cut a pretty long strand to connect the other side of your work when we are done. So chain 1, cut and fasten your yarn. Now you should be having something like this. We are done working one panel or one part of our work. You are going to turn your work, and you are going to connect your yarn in the very next stitch, and just as you did for the at one side, you're going to repeat the same exact thing for the other side of your panel. So you are going to skip a stitch, and you are going to make 2 incomplete double crochets, making a decrease, and you are going to keep working your double crochets until you have 3 stitches remaining, and we shall decrease in our 3 stitches. So the same exact pattern, you are going to decrease 7 rows, and you are going to make your normal rows again 7, and we are going to make our arm rows, which is 4 4 4 on each side of our work. So if you didn't understand anything, just go back and watch how we did for the front panel, and do the same thing for this other side of the panel. Is totally the same, there's no difference, it's the same. So just go ahead and do this, and I'll meet you when I'm done with my panel. If you have watched up until this point, my love, my darling, my baby, and you haven't still subscribed to the channel, you haven't done well. Please subscribe to the channel. This will encourage and help us to create more content and come to class on time always. So I'm done, and this is what you should be having. So I'm done stitching the first side. So I'm going to walk you through how to attach the other side of your work. If you did everything correct, your work should be aligned. Like the moment you finish your everything should be like perfect. So I'm going to be connecting it with single crochet. You can choose to use your darning needle or work slip stitches. So at this point, I'm out of yarn, so I use 3 balls, and it's not enough, and I don't have my last color to complete it. So meaning if you're making for a size small and you are using milk cotton, you should consider using 4 balls. So I'm out of yarn, so I'm going to quickly switch up, and I'll meet you and we shall complete. So this is the switch up. I'm doing the same thing, but this time I work 2 panels. So to work 2 panels, let me explain to you. With the round panel, I started with 130 chains. So if you're working 2 panels, then you divide that by 2. So I made a slip knot and I started with 65 chains. So after the 65 chains, you chain 2 and you skip the 2 and you start making your double crochets until you have 18 rows. When you get to your 18 rows, you decrease for 7 and you make your normal rows again for 7 and you make your arms. So, and you're going to make the same identical, like the same panel 2 times. So 65 plus 2, 65 plus 2, the same exact method. After that, you are going to attach the size of your yarn just as we did for the collar, the next side. So that is where we are now. So now to work around your armhole, you are going to place 2 single crochets in each row. Make sure you are working in rows. So place 2 single crochet around the borders of your armhole, and I'll meet you when I'm done with my 2 single crochets. So keep working 2 single crochets in each row around the armhole. All around. Again, if you are working with the previous one, is the same. So we are done with the work. It was literally left with the border to work the borders of our armhole and the neck. That's the only thing left. So nothing has changed except for the fact that with this panel we work 2 panels instead of working all round, but all gives you the same result. So just choose which one you prefer. If the round is a bit problematic for you, please go with the 2 panels, and if the 2 panels is also a problematic difficult for you, please go with the round. At this point you have options. So at the end of the row, you are going to slip stitch and we are going to chain 3. Now you are going to place your work aside and we are going to be making a long chain. So with the long chain, I put 3 strands together and I'm chaining this with a 6.0 hook. So you are going to make a long chain that can go around the armhole, right? So I lost count, so just make a long chain and don't cut and fasten your work. When you eyeball and it can go around the arm, just leave it as it is, right? And we shall work this around the armhole. So I'm going to show you. So I just work this around the armhole and I didn't cut. So when you are done with your work, you can now unravel it before you cut and fasten your mesh. So I'm going to demonstrate to you what I did on both sides of the armhole with the neck. So it's the same exact thing, so you just have to watch carefully and then you repeat the same thing for your armhole, just as I've done it around the borders of my arm. So first of all, you are going to make single crochets around the borders of your work. So you saw us doing single crochet around the arm, right? Exactly. So you are going to start with the single crochets around the borders of your work, both of the armholes and the neck. After you are done with your single crochets, you are going to slip stitch in the very first stitch, in the very first single crochet stitch, you are going to slip stitch. And now you are going to take the mesh what you've just worked, and you are going to place the mesh inside your work. So just place it. Just look at how I'm going to do it, because we are going to be working around the mesh, so we are going to be covering the mesh. So the mesh is the strand is 7 as a cord. So this is like a cord, so let's call it our cord. So we are going to work around the cord. Inside each stitch we are going to make a single crochet, working around the cord or the strand. So if you can make a thick cord, that's absolutely fine, but if you cannot, just make a very long strand and work single crochets around the strands to cover the strand. So this gives it a puffy feeling around the edges of your work, and that's literally it. So work around, and you're going to repeat the same thing for both of the armholes, and that is basically what I did. So go around. And at the end of the row, so as you are working, you'll be taking your cord around or your strands around and just be working your single crochet, covering your strand or your cord all around until the end of the row. At the end of the row, you are going to slip stitch and you are going to chain cut. So this is what I told you not to tighten your work. So you're just going to make as long as you can, and when you are done, you can just unravel it before you fasten. You cut and fasten your work, if you understand this. So now we are going to go one more time with our single crochets, because we have some loose tails and we want to sew all that in, so our work will be very neat. So again, in each stitch you are going to work single crochets, covering the cord or the strand. So this literally all what you have to do, and at the end of the row you just have to slip stitch and we are done. So basically this is how to make our top. If you have a better way to work your edges, please do, and if not, just follow this. And you can also decide to make your cord around the bottom of the top. That would be beautiful. I didn't do that, but I'm hoping to see you create more of this in your own unique style. Until we meet next week, my love, my darlings, my baby, don't forget to cut all loose ends and make sure your work doesn't unravel, and make sure your work is absolutely neat. Until we meet next week in class, my baby, my darling, my sweetheart, my love, is bye-bye. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and this year my new year message for you is I love you and I would always do. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.